nobody's ever gone 16-0. I don't believe. Like that number, I don't think has existed. That specific, people have gone undefeated and have gone through a season and been perfect. And, but that's a lot of games, especially with like the weird time off and everything like that. I'm not saying it's a variable that's going to get in the way of Indiana winning this game or a national championship, but it's a variable to overcome.
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option. I'm your host, Yogi Roth. Today's guest presented by our founding partner, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. He's the man who never misses a beat. You know the man, the solid verbal Dan Rubenstein, food connoisseur, cinema connoisseur, great friend, loves a good latte, loves a good dessert, right? I mean, Dan, we do it at least once a year. And here we are on the precipice of your Ducks. I like the Ducks too. And our Hoosiers, which is the greatest story I think we'd agree in our college football lifetime. Yeah. Which we're right around the same age. They meet in the semifinals, and then maybe Mario Cristobal versus Ole Miss. Maybe Mario finds his way to go up against his old squad. Who knows what'll shake out this coming weekend. But thank you for joining this podcast, man. I appreciate your time.
Of course, my pleasure. Anytime. You're Yogi Roth. This is a different level, right? We're not talking about just the citizens out there. Anybody can start a podcast. You got to be Yogi Roth to nail a podcast.
Well, we're OGs in the podcast game.
It's true.
You, how many years have you been doing the solid verbal now?
Man, we started in 2008. So 17 years? Something like that?
Wow. 2008. That's amazing. That was
before I knew you.
That's a great point. Yeah, I was still coaching in 2000. I was working the Rose Bowl with some bad khakis on. John David Booty putting on the Michigan Wolverines.
This is true. Yeah, we started early. It was like Bill Simmons in 07, 08. There were a couple of early shows, and I met Ty when we were both at Sports Illustrated, but we didn't actually meet each other until I guess 2 years into the show. It was like a Sleepless in Seattle situation.
Sure was.
We met halfway across the country at a Nebraska-Texas game. One of our early listeners was the video coordinator for Nebraska football under Bo Pelini, and he was like, "You guys should come to Lincoln." And so we met each other literally in Lincoln, Nebraska, halfway between Pennsylvania and Los Angeles. And it was weird, but it was great, and we've been doing it all ever since.
I love that. Okay, it's a great bridge because one of my favorite memories of this season is you sending me a photo of you in Happy Valley.
Yeah.
Dan's at the whiteout. It's the Ducks versus them. This is Penn State at the height of their season. And here we go. Epic game. Of course, Penn State goes the other way. The Ducks find their way to continue playing. I'm kind of curious, Dan, you're a guy who went to Oregon. You know the Ducks really well. You think back to that game to where we are now. It seems like that was 2008.
Yes.
To be quite honest with you. But when you put this team into context from that moment to now, I'm curious how you see it, because you saw it from the stands and now you see it from your screen.
Yeah, there seems to be a good amount of resilience to this Oregon team, right? It hasn't been a year like we've seen under previous years with Dan Lanning and maybe previous quarterbacks or previous coaches like Chip Kelly, where they will go into a huge game and win it, 49-20. Right? There's a different rhythm to this Oregon team. I would say since that game specifically, they've gotten better defensively. And, the tide turned in that game a little bit when Penn State started running straight at Oregon and had those late drives to send it to overtime. But I thought Oregon did a nice job this year finding their rotation on the defensive line, trusting those really young corners. Obviously, Brandon Finney Jr. shined against Texas Tech this past round in Miami. The safeties have really come together. I think they've gotten more comfortable with a little bit of a defensive scheme shift. They're running sort of a three safety look and running more zone. I think likely in preparation for the playoff, right? Getting more comfortable knowing that they might see Jeremiah Smith in January and with what he did to them last year. And so they look more comfortable. I think they've settled in on guys on defense. And it's those, the couple of those closer game moments, right? The Iowa game, where they had that drive late to win that game. And I don't know. I think there's a certain amount of confidence that was built up over the course of the season. And as weird as it is to say, they've leaned on their defense, which is not always an Oregon sentence that we've uttered a lot of the time. And the offense has been explosive at times, has been efficient at times. They've leaned on the running game at times, but there haven't been as many weeks where you look at this offense and say, this is a machine. And so I credit Dan Lanning and the staff, especially with both coordinators working 2 long jobs to figure out ways to win games. And whether that's winning ugly, whether that's winning with defense, whether that's just taking what defenses are given to you and not necessarily dictating all the time downfield. I think they've grown into that role really nicely as, a team that can figure out a win and be problem solvers, not necessarily the flashiest in the world.
Yeah, I think when you look at the 4 teams remaining, they're the one that has been, in my opinion at least, like overlooked all year, and not in a negative way, but they weren't the favorite to come into the season, and it's because they were so young or inexperienced at certain positions, whether it's in the secondary, new players, corners. I did their spring game, and I remember coming out of it and telling Dan at even media days in July, I was like, I think this team is better than last year, and he was like,
right.
Shh. We got to go play. Like, I know we have the potential, but we have to go play. And then we've watched this arc. Like, I know you went back and you go to the Solid Verbals YouTube channel. Check out Dan's latest podcast. It's great. They break down the semifinal matchups. We're obviously doing that right here at Y Option as well. So thanks for subscribing to our YouTube channel and Substack platform. But you go back and you watch that game, and to me, like, we watched the maturity of a team all season long. Now, everybody matures. Everybody gets better. But Indiana's got 19 upperclassmen starting. Mm-hmm. That's the most in the country. Much like Ohio State did when they won it. Much like Michigan and Washington did when they played in the national title game. Oregon is not that. They don't have that amount of depth of veterans. So they've truly grown, like in the way your kids grow. Where do you think is the one area that you circle in this game that you're like, this growth is going to allow this team, my team, your team, to advance to the national championship game?
It's a great question. I think they've grown more on defense than on offense. I think with what the secondary can do at its best, I think is probably the point where, we saw it in the Texas Tech game, but the pass rush, sort of paired with the secondary, right? That Tatum Tuioti is really the leader of, in terms of production, what this defensive line has done this year. And then you see Mateo, who physically is just on another level when he is locked in like he was against Texas Tech. And then you pair that with the ability to put guys like Ife Obadegwu and Brandon Finney Jr. on islands, and Dylan Thieneman patrolling. Aaron Flowers has been great in run support, especially this season. And so they've taken a hit in terms of depth along in the secondary with the portal this year. But look, if you lose a starting corner or a starting safety, no matter who you are at this point in the season, you're kind of screwed. So I really look at the pass defense as a place where Oregon can thrive, and they better, because they're playing against Fernando Mendoza, who just won the Heisman Trophy, and he offers all sorts of problems for everybody that Indiana is going to face. But I think the growth there is is probably the best place that Oregon can dictate in this game.
Yeah, I think something that stands out to me on the other side of the ball, or the little details, especially at the skill positions. It's a relatively young, inexperienced group coming into the season. Obviously, Kenyon Sadiq was a name we knew. Gary Bryant's been around college football forever, but the phrase that Will Stein often uses is like time on task. Like, they didn't have an insane amount within this system. And right. I'm watching them now, like, snapping off routes with tremendous precision, getting north and south. Like, I just think they've done a beautiful job there over the course of this season of just continued growth at that position amid obvious injuries and other players have to elevate. I'm curious for you, like, if go to like the fan base, because I know you're really connected to the fan base, much sure. like myself here on the West Coast. On one side for Indiana, you just locked up both coordinators, potentially for a couple years, but definitely for another one. Yep. On the other side, you've got the Oregon Ducks, which I love this stat of Dan Lanning of the 3 coordinators that have taken head coaching jobs. They're all at their dream schools. Kenny Dillingham, dream school. Tosh Lupoy, dream school. Will Stein, dream school. At least in the top 2 of their dream list. Those guys are off. And here we sit, and we don't need to belabor the calendar like everybody else. We all know the truth around it. But here they are, portal, signings. Like, there's only so many hours in a day, and I love the discipline they have. I believe in it. But I'm curious for you, like, what is the lens you see it from, like, a fan? It's almost like you're happy for them, but maybe you're not, because you wish that they had only one job instead of 2.
Yeah, no, you're happy for him. Obviously, it speaks very well of like what you can accomplish at Oregon as a coordinator, that these guys are getting those jobs and are able to, move on to the next stage of their careers. Yeah, look, like you can't question Tosh Lupoy in this moment after pitching a shutout, right? His unit
Dominant.
pitching a
Yeah.
shutout against Texas Tech, and the ability to generate those turnovers and put them in position and really win them that game. Oregon had 2 touchdowns, one on a short field because of the defense, and the other was at the very end of the game as sort of an emphatic moment for this Oregon team. And so it was the defense that won the day for Oregon. Look, you can, if the defense doesn't perform against Indiana, if the offense doesn't perform against Indiana, it will be easy for this fan base to say it was too much on their plate to game plan and be in, Lexington or Berkeley and host portal visitors and recruit and hire coaches and fill out a recruiting staff and everything that goes along with this time of year. But I think they've gotten the benefit of the doubt because Will Stein has been terrific for Oregon. Tosh has been terrific for Oregon. I guess maybe short of that Ohio State game last year. And Dan Lanning has talked about the ways in which they've changed their preparation for this year's postseason and sort of allowing more rest and allowing guys to be looser and trying to peak at the right time. And I guess it's just going to be a results thing, right? That it's, if you're a college football fan, you can understand the context and you can feel for them and that challenge. But if they go 3 and out the first 5 drives against Indiana, you're not going to be like, good for Will Stein for getting his dream job, right? Like we really do as fans. We look at this and either like you're successful or you're not, and let's hope for the former.
I wanted to ask you that because you always have great perspective. My lens on this, man, is that knowing the coaching profession like we do, there is not a stone that will be unturned in this preparation for the Ducks. So
and it's been going on for a while.
That's right. Whether they go 3 and out or not for their first 5 drives, to me, has nothing to do with the jobs that both coordinators just respectively took because of the immense respect they have for this team and the absolute job. And the better that Oregon does, the better it is for Kentucky, the better it is for Cal. And I love, to me, I call it this like a CEO. This is a CEO time. You look at these 4 teams. What is it like in Oxford? How is Mario navigating it? I believe that Kurt Cignetti might be the greatest CEO as a head coach, maybe in my lifetime. And I think for Dan Lanning, watching his arc from year 1 to now is as impressive as any young head coaches. And like Sig has said many times, he is the future of the sport. He took up a lot of the oxygen that Saban and Harbaugh left when they departed the sport that both of us love dearly. At least from a coaching standpoint. So I can't wait to see like the psychology of both of these sidelines when they roll out. I think in this semi that we're talking about, Indiana, Oregon, I think we're going to get the best in class. I think the teams will be their sharpest. I'm curious for you, like, is there anything in you that says, you know what, Indiana, like it's been quite a run. It's hard to keep up. I heard you say it on your pod, like Ohio State, they just dominated Alabama. I'm kind of curious as you've manifested on that, if you think that's a thing or you think this is just who this team is.
I think it's a thing. I don't necessarily believe that it's the thing for Indiana, that it's going to hold them back. I'm just going on what we've seen as, college football people over the years, that, nobody's ever gone 16-0. I don't believe like that number. I don't think has existed. That specific, people have gone undefeated and have gone through a season and been perfect. And, but that's a lot of games, especially with like the weird time off and everything like that. I'm not saying it's a variable that's going to get in the way of Indiana winning this game or a national championship, but it's a variable to overcome. And so they were the one team to win after that long stretch. I think what it was 1-7 now overall, something like that. So that speaks volumes about their ability to prepare and lock in and shut out any noise and, keep players on a schedule and keep players locked in. So no, there are just different like circumstantial variables that I think could hamper Indiana, but I think those variables could hamper Oregon in the way we talk about the coordinators and the way we talk about like, bouncing back after playing a really tough Texas Tech defense. What does this offense look like? Where's the confidence like, within the offensive rooms after not doing a ton to finish out drives in their previous round? So no, what Indiana has done is nothing short of remarkable. And you do mention the older players thing. And winning losable games, I think, is a huge deal, right? That, we saw Texas Tech win every game by 30, but they weren't really tested late in games. They weren't, in close second halves, to their credit. But Indiana has played some of those, the Iowa game, obviously the Oregon game, the Ohio State game. There is something that we like to say on the show that like winning is a skill. And that's right. It's keeping players locked in the fourth quarter. It's having a plan for a 90-second drive, for a 47-second drive, for a 3-minute drive, whatever. And when you have that plan, your shoulders relax, right? Because the coaching staff is ready. You know that the players are ready. You rep it in practice. And it's just clear when you watch Indiana. Indiana's so good right now. And I don't know how good Alabama is. I've sort of long thought Alabama being in this playoff is kind of fraudulent. But Indiana treated them like a fraudulent team, so that's fine. Indiana's so good that I've started to convince myself that like they're crazy cheating in a way that we haven't seen, right? And to be clear, I don't think they're cheating.
They're not.
But like when you see like the home run numbers from the steroid era, you're like, Brady Anderson did what? Right? All of a sudden, Indiana football is doing what? You probably didn't think we'd have a Brady Anderson reference on this show.
90210. That's where my head went. I was like, Dylan, sideburn.
Right.
Brady Anderson, sideburn.
Is Kurt Signetti giving his players orca steroids, right? Where there's like something insane happening behind the scenes. And that wouldn't do anything, right? They're making plays. They're super smart and brainy. But to do it at Indiana, to do what they've done, is just nothing short of miraculous, I guess, if you listen to Indiana fans who have been through it. I don't know.
So answer this one for me. Because you referenced no one has ever done, right? That's kind of been the joke in Bloomington. Like, you're the first since, like every week is the first since. But if they are to win it all, are they the best team ever? No one's ever gone 16-0.
No.
And I love that you're taking a breath. Because the context to me is like, well, Miami back in 02 or 01. Right. I played against
LSU 19.
The SC teams, Alabama 2020. But like, nobody's done it. They drilled Alabama, who, look, a lot of the world thought Alabama would win the game because you didn't watch, to your point, those tight games and how they won them.
Right.
A lot of people thought every week somebody was going to get them, whether it was losing in Eugene, losing in the game against Ohio State. Like,
right.
Is there a case for the Indiana Hoosiers, if they're to win it all, like they are like the modern day Hoosiers, and you could argue one of the greatest teams, at least in the last 20 years?
It's a fascinating conversation. The answer is yes, because you can talk about the talent of teams like Miami. You can talk about the talent of like the wide receiver room at LSU in 2019, or like how crazy efficient, the Florida State offense was in 2013, or the Alabama offense under, I think it was Mac Jones and Sark, right? In 2020, right? They just demolish Ohio State in the national championship, right? And they have all those crazy receivers. I don't think we're going to see the number of like NFL draft picks and first round picks from some of those teams come from this Indiana roster. But going 16-0, beating Ohio State, beating Oregon twice, beating some combination of Ole Miss or Miami. They got a down Penn State, a down Penn State sort of affected everybody's path. But otherwise, I don't think they played anybody significant in the non-conference portion of the schedule. I guess current Wisconsin quarterback Colton Joseph and Old Dominion.
Kennesaw State did a nice job. Shout out to the Paris Musketeers. Mark Mattioli, one of the top DCs in the country.
Oregon just beat a national champ as we record this show in the Montana State Bobcats.
That's right.
That I think you could use against them, but the manner in which they've won these games, the fact that they went to Oregon and then beat Oregon on a neutral field, if that comes to pass, and given the degree of difficulty in doing it in Bloomington as opposed to Baton Rouge or Tuscaloosa. Yes. And I always believe, and this is the sort of like maybe younger person relatively speaking here, I think sports just get harder, right? That like it's harder in this era to build an excellent team because the talent is more spread out because of NIL and portal. It's harder to build an excellent team in the NBA because athletes are better and you've got all sorts of salary cap stuff that, prevents teams from being excellent and being dynastic, whatever. It's harder in baseball. It's harder in football, right? Because of the scheduling and just how much more talented defenses are now. And so I'm just a big believer that athletes get better over time. They get smarter, they train better. So that Indiana is doing this in 2026, 2025 is more impressive a run than perhaps what USC was faced with, than what Miami was faced with than what 1995 Nebraska was faced with, because sports are just harder over time. And so if Wazoo wins a national championship in 2039 and they go undefeated and they, take down all these power teams, I'm going to say that's more impressive than Indiana. It's just always going to be harder to me.
Go here, go there, go anywhere with 76.
Yeah, I love it. Go Cougs. I think the point is that, like, the context around Indiana, if they are to win this game and then win a national title, it needs to shift, in my opinion, or just live within the same sentence of one of the greatest sports stories of our lifetimes.
Of course.
And one of the greatest college football teams of our lifetimes, based on the context of the sport. And I feel like they're getting a little bit of an asterisk, and I think since that Bama game, it's starting to get removed. I think people are starting to see what we have seen. And I went back, I picked the playoff run. Like Big Ten Network had to do a little graphic. Okay, who's going to win? Do your bracket. And I picked Oregon to win it all. And then I'm sitting in bed late one night, Dan, and I pop up and I'm like, but why? Like, why am I ignoring what my eyes say in their 9 conference games in the Big Ten title game? Like, I just can't ignore it. So take away all of the narratives, logos, etc. I was like, they are the best team I have seen all season in college football, and pick them to win it all, regardless of my bracket status, because no one really cares. The point was, like, once we eliminate the story and the circumstance and all of the things around it, it's like they might have the number 1 draft pick at quarterback. They've got a legit left tackle. They have multiple NFL players. The defense plays as good a team defense as I've seen since those Miami days.
Totally.
And there's a different style of defense, 2 big time coordinators. Like, it was a moment for me to pop up and be like, yeah, like, that is a truth. Indiana may be, and at least coming into the playoff, was the best team, in my opinion, in the country.
It's an interesting thing too, because in this era, we're just not familiar year over year over year with rosters like we were way back when you get the years of Matt Leinart, when you get the years of Jonathan Vilma, when you get the years of Justin Jefferson or whatever. And so when you look at this Indiana team, one, for some of us, it's hard to look past the uniform, right? You see the Indiana uniform, you're like, this is a team that was a struggling program forever. 2, you're like, okay, so they're going to put together this quarterback from Cal, this defensive end from Kent State, this receiver from James Madison, this tight end from Wisconsin, this running back from Maryland. And so you say to yourself, like, they feel like not an all-star team, but you just don't have the familiarity to be like, all right, I've seen them for 3 years, and so how can I go against them? You've seen them since Labor Day, right? This team did not exist before Labor Day. So for you to feel strongly about this team, the sample size is lower, and you couple that with, like, the history of believing in a team like Indiana, it's sometimes tough to wrap your mind around that kind of excellence coming together that quickly, because we've only been in this era for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's another reason by AP poll.
Right.
You don't know who anybody is. It's just based on what they did at Maryland.
Like,
Roman
yeah,
Haven?
like Ty picked this year. Ty picked Illinois to beat Indiana on the road, right? The game was in Bloomington.
Yeah.
And before the season started, it was a worthwhile conversation to be like, this is a battle for like the 4th best team in the Big Ten, right? That you'd think like, okay, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, some combination will be the top 3. And maybe Illinois after winning like they did last year, maybe Indiana after winning like they did last year. And when you look back at like that even being a conversation, and Illinois was like totally decent this year. But the idea that that's an actual conversation, can Illinois win in Bloomington, is one of the funniest things you can look back on.
Great point.
And that happened a few weeks ago. That wasn't that long ago.
I love that. Okay, I want to get you out on 2 more topics.
Okay, please.
And again, appreciate your time here. This is awesome. Check out the Solid Verbal. Dan is incredible and a dear friend of mine. Okay, just give me your thoughts on Miami, Ole Miss, because that one, like that thing at Ole Miss is way more chaotic than what's going on in Eugene, right? Like Eugene's good, folks. They're fine. Dan, Will, Tosh, not sweating it one bit. In Oxford, it's kind of like, At least from the outside looking in, I'm curious your purview on this game and what I know a guy who we both know well and respect, Mario Cristobal, has done at Miami.
Yeah. First of all, the funniest possible thing that could happen is Ole Miss winning a national championship and their coach leaving them weeks before. That's the funniest possible thing that could happen in this college. The most impressive thing would be Indiana. The best thing for me personally would be Oregon. The coolest thing for Miami fans, obviously taking a little 25-year, 23-year break. That's a cool story. Ole Miss with are all of their assistant coaches in Oxford this week, and are they going to make the trip to Arizona this week? I haven't seen confirmation yet. It would be wild. It would be absolutely wild. In games like this where you kind of understand where these two programs lean into, right? It's line play and especially that defensive front for Miami, and then speed on offense, speed on defense for Ole Miss. And we talked about this on the show. What's the flip looking like? What does the speed do for Miami, and what does the power look like for Ole Miss, right? How do they hold up on defense on third and short? How does Miami figure out ways to get, maybe more guys than just Malachi Toney involved? CJ Daniels had some key first downs against Ohio State. Keontae Scott, obviously, with the huge pick six when he jumped the screen. But that, to me, is what it comes down to, because Miami has not been an explosive team, essentially beyond getting Malachi Toney touches this season. They've been very deliberate. They let their defense suffocate teams, and they move the ball and try not to make mistakes on offense. And then Ole Miss, they haven't been great defensively against the run, but they get off the field, they rush the passer, and they have the ultimate wild card in this game, which is a potential folk hero quarterback, D2 Ferris State in Trinidad Chambliss, buying time with fast receivers. We'll see on Kejuan Lacey's health at running back, but he's, excellent when he's healthy and running. And it's just something you can't account for when you have that degree of a playmaker who can beat up on Georgia. What did he go, 10 for 10 or something like that to close out that game?
It's awesome.
That's the difference to me. I like Miami in this game just because when you get to this time of year, it does feel like who has the better big dudes, and I think Miami does, but I don't feel good about it. I mean, Miami scored how many points against Ohio State on offense? 14? That's the thing. Ole Miss scores 30 on everybody. They went to Norman and scored 30 on a great Oklahoma defense. So if we get into a track meet type situation, it's really hard to love Miami there. But I think Miami should do just enough to dictate in those high leverage moments. I love how they closed the game against Ohio State when it was sort of in doubt. So I'm leaning Miami close, but I think both of these games are going to be excellent.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Okay, so I just want to get your big purview.
By the way, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
How much time do you have? Because you're so locked in on Big Ten, you're so locked in on West Coast that can you sneak a little football in on a flight back from Bloomington or State College to watch Oklahoma, Texas, or Florida State, You shouldn't watch Florida State football. To watch Ole Miss, Alabama, whatever. Can you get that?
Yeah, I sure can. What was fun this year that has never happened before in my lifetime was I think I called 9 games in a 14-week season. Mm-hmm. They were 9 a.m. Pacific games, meaning They were kicked off at noon. And I think it was a stretch of maybe 9 weeks in a row where that happened. So I was back east all the time. So you're knocking your game out, and then you are hopping to the airport. Yeah. YouTube TV on the console, not driving, just listening. And away you go. You get to the airport and you're getting as many games as you want. In addition, there was a lot of delays this year in the Midwest. So I got to catch a ton of football. As you know, you live in Chicago. Yeah. And I'm often flying through there. So I caught a ton of football, and big props to Delta Airlines because you got to watch
the live
TV, the whole game. So you pull up, you've got the screen in front of you, you got your laptop, you got an iPad, and oftentimes no one will be sitting next to me. And because there are these late night flights. So I would be able to catch 3 or 4 games at a time.
So who was doing it for you outside of your footprint? Who did it for you this year? Who did you really like? Who was just a great TV show outside of the Big Ten for you?
Okay, I'm trying to stay outside of the Big Ten on the West Coast because I'm going to say Cal every weekend. I felt like it was a 10:30 game, and that was just a tight one every single time. I enjoyed watching Ole Miss this season. To be honest, I enjoyed watching Georgia because I thought they were up and down. I enjoyed watching Bama. I know Kalen well. I went down and spent time with Alabama in May, so got to know their program at at a good level.
Mm-hmm.
And watching the loss to Florida State, you're so curious how the build. And then, John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, like Ben's a good friend. So, watching that thing evolve. So you kind of get to piece it together pretty good. And then my Sundays and Mondays, I'm lucky as a broadcaster, and you have this too. There's so many ways to watch games now. So I can go back and I'm like, all right, Kentucky stifled so-and-so. All right, let me just see what this defense do. Or you're starting to think about the coordinator games. I'm talking ADs all the time, like who might be doing well, who might be struggling, why. So I could go clip off like a dope half of a game, which was really a fun part of my season. And then what I do on this little side screen here to take you inside my setup here is I've got cut-ups for all the top teams that I'm watching. So it's like, let me go watch back that Miami versus whomever game. Let me go watch Clemson. Like Cade came to Elite 11 this summer, Cade Klubnik, and I was like, what is going on? You got Garrett Riley, like just kind of trying to figure out this offense. So I can go back and watch like the second half of a game that they're playing. What happened there? So I felt this year, Dan, like I had my hands around the country more than ever in my life.
Good.
Part of it was last year was such a growth season at the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these teams? Every year we say, who are these teams? But like, who are these teams? Who are these coordinators? Like, it was so focused on that this year I felt like I could open my aperture, whether it's Notre Dame or Florida State or Miami or now Ole Miss, of course, with all the drama that surrounded Lane, having worked for him, a while ago.
But also that can make you a better broadcaster, right? That if you're pointing out something in a Minnesota game that you saw in an Oklahoma game, you're just like, oh, this is an interesting trend that's happening in the sport.
You're spot on. What was really cool, actually, just to be a total nerd, and I know you love this part of it, I became obsessed this year with situational football.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would study situations unlike any year in my career, so much so that, like, a lot of our production meetings on Fridays, you could argue with head coaches, half of them were situational. Hey, in this game 3 weeks ago, did you notice that? Hey, 2:30 left in a half. Are you going to call a defensive timeout? And what was cool is that I started to gather information with our crew where we would look at a ton of games and we were able to sort games, and you get to use AI in this regard a little bit of like, what are the tightest games of the weekend? What are the situations that showed up? And then to your point, you can find those clips like nothing. And then you're learning as the year goes on. So I found that actually made me in my broadcasting craft, like, I'm sure, probably the most improved from start to end because of the situational parts of it.
Can you please start telling coaches to call timeouts before the 2-minute timeout?
Well, which side of the ball? It drives
me nuts.
It depends which side of the ball.
No, I mean, if they're trying to come back, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the math works out where you're trying to hoard as many seconds as possible. And you're just like, so you're going to let the 2-minute timeout go and then call a timeout when there's 1:13 left? You could be hoarding those seconds when there are 3 minutes and 13 seconds.
You're exactly right. And it's a fun conversation. Like, you connect to some of these, there's a lot of analytics companies that are doing things like this now. So, we were able to connect with a few of them during the season, and you're asking them questions. Why do they see things? And then as you're calling it, you're like, okay, I know enough now, Dan, of like the analytics would say, call a timeout, for instance. Mm-hmm. But the flow of this game is saying don't. And I think that's like really fun now as a listener. You know this.
Sure.
Going to like a friend's house to watch the semifinals is the worst idea under the sun.
Agreed.
I need silence, audio up, the ability to rewind, and taking notes the whole time.
It's your own private, like Aaron Rodgers cabin in Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I get it.
So let's go to your private cabin on my last question.
Sure.
I'm going to do an episode next week on the state of the game around quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And you start to think in your mind, how many quarterbacks in college football that we will project as starters for next year? Because we know the starters. Like, Wisconsin signed a guy from Old Dominion and said, meet our starting quarterback on social media.
Yep.
Like, it is, the starters. How many came out of high school? Like, you think about that. So few. And I'm going to take a deep dive into it next week once we get to the semifinal games. So I'm curious for you, like, as we see a reported near $5 million quarterback who's a good player going to Texas Tech, $5 million quarterback? If you have the money, maybe.
Depends what LSU is willing to pay, right? You're worth what the market's dictating.
What's your line say? Like, I'm just kind of curious of your state of the game. Yeah. And I say this coming off a convo I had with the head coach last night of, here we are early in the week. It's a Tuesday. We record this Tuesday morning. We kept talking about like how the 60 minutes are magical. Like, never been better, I would argue, whether it's the cameras, the angles, the stats, the analytics, the players, the parity, whatever. But man, the cloud over the sport once the game ends, I think has never been thicker. So I'm curious from your purview as someone who's done this podcast, yours, The Solid Verbal, since 2008 to now. You've seen all the iterations like I have. What do you think about the state of the game, and I would argue like the state of quarterbacks amid all the movement we're seeing?
It's definitely weird. It's definitely, we sort of alluded to this before with like, Indiana with the different players. And look, I root for a team in Oregon that has been very heavy in the portal at times. They've started, 3 quarterbacks in 4 years or whatever it is, with Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, and now Dante Moore. It's strange. Weirdly, it adds juice to the sport with the portal. And look, the actual thing college football is selling fans is hope. Okay. That like, yes, last year was disappointing, but we lost 3 close games. And if that call goes that way, if this guy doesn't tip this pass, if this gust of wind doesn't knock down a field goal, something like that, we're 9-3, right? That there's a certain amount of hope that this sport sells basically to everyone. Maybe not Florida State fans. Once again, it's been tough. But I understand why people who don't have a team or kind of are casual about the sport, which is great, by the way. You love casual fans. I love a casual fan. A lot of people use that word derogatively. I love a casual fan. Amen. Treat the sport like a TV show. Take it for whatever you like out of it and move on with your life. Great. For me, it gives me a lot to talk about with the show. And it does offer us new teams to care about more often, like Indiana, for example, right? Or like Texas Tech. Texas Tech didn't finish ranked between 2009 and this season. So that's 16 years of not finishing ranked.
That's amazing.
And that was, the height of Mike Leach. And then things went sideways and they just weren't a team that could really finish. And Joey McGuire did a pretty good job even before this season, but that's not who they were. And so it adds variety to the sport. All of this movement, all of this money, all of this lawlessness does at least add variety. But like, I always think about Oregon State and Washington State. I always think about like Cal playing at NC State all the time. I could not be less of a fan of realignment. I could not care less that TV ratings are going to be so-and-so for this conference and not for that. I don't care. In a lot of ways, I think the sport has gone too far in one direction. The portal thing, I don't mind as much. I don't know. I'm okay if these players have value with maximizing their value. I wish there were more organization. I wish there were more direct ways to employ players and have more like standardized contracts and, have players have more of a say in the business direction of this sport. But like, they're here for 3, 4, 5 years and gone. So it's not like having Sam Cassell or somebody run the Players Association because he's been in the league for 9 years. You didn't think we were going Sam Cassell with the show either.
Did not. No.
So it's just like, yes, it would be great if an outspoken linebacker for Tennessee was able to lead a players association, but he's gone pretty quickly. So I think my headline is, I like the juice of the portal. I like the ability for players like, if we were watching Khalil Mack at Buffalo this year, he'd be at Ohio State or Florida or Oregon, and that would be good to see him on that kind of stage to see what he can accomplish. It's good that we got to see, there's a defensive lineman who transferred from Jared Verse, Albany, like low level, go Great Danes, goes to Florida State. Like, it's good that these guys have the opportunity to better their lives, to better their situations, to better their exposure for the NFL. I like all of that, and I'm never going to apologize for liking that. I just wish we had a little bit more of a standardization of how this all operates. And that bums me out that like I might not know where Deuce Knight is playing until week 7 next year.
Yeah.
That bums me out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Two things can be true. It's become my new favorite phrase from the start of the season to now. And I see all these young athletes at the Elite 11 where you and I really connected a long time ago. Shout out Jake Rodriguez.
Yeah, of course.
Gunnar Keel and Tanner Mangum. 3 of our favorites.
Zach Klein? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Zach Klein. I see these guys at this age, and I know it's the most developmental position in all of sports. At least that's my purview on it. And I think high school players, quarterbacks, getting developed at the greatest rate of our lifetime. And I think college quarterbacks are getting developed at the slowest rate.
Well, what does that mean? What do you mean that they're getting develop, that they're playing in like year round 7 on and getting reps like
year
they never
round
could.
7 on reps they never could, understanding coverages, understanding the mental skills necessary. Like
Sure.
it is a beautiful time, I think, to pour yourself into that position if you're a high school quarterback.
Mhm.
I think when you get to college, you have all your resources. But I just wonder, that's why I'm doing this study, and I'm going to do a whole show on this next week at yoption.com, is do you have a chance to play at an SEC or Big Ten school? Let's just start with those, let alone other high revenue driving or non-NIL, whatever, pockets that are deep like Texas Tech if you haven't come through the portal. Like, I don't know if you have a chance to play coming out of high school at those places anymore. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's just what the thing is. I'm not a fan of drafting quarterbacks in the NFL. I think it's a horrible idea. You're the worst team. You got the number 1 pick. Don't draft the quarterback. The Raiders, draft Caleb Downs. Not happy with the Raiders right now, as you might imagine. But my point is that, like, I understand it. But, like, what is happening to these players that have all of this potential? And I love Signetti's quote of, like, give me production over potential all day long, for sure. But at some point, like, you're 18 and it's potential, and then you have to go and you have to develop. I don't know how many of these top 20 teams that have a chance to go to the playoff, and I hope we expand. I'm a fan of 24. Like, how many those teams are saying we're going to go with the redshirt freshman who we saw in a spring? Like, it's a gamble. I'm not saying it's a bad gamble, but it is more of a risk than ever before, because I can bring in a guy with 35 starts with his coordinator. I get it. So I'm going to do the deep dive on the numbers of what it reflects. Is I think I'm going to be disappointed with it. Most projected starters are going to be transfer guys, especially in the Big Ten, the SEC.
Look, so we've never had more money around the sport. It's not necessarily that, like, these programs have a surplus of cash, but how much money is Jimbo Fisher paid to not coach, right? So
that's a great point.
The pressure is there because these schools will just fire you for not performing, even if you've been pretty good but have a 7-5 year. So then you're just like, if you're a coach, you say to yourself, can I take a developmental year for my quarterback? Can I take this kind of risk on a redshirt freshman? Or can I bring in Brendan Sorsby? Or can I bring in Noah Fafita? Or can I bring in Drew Mestamaker? Whatever, when that's going to give me a much higher floor, because I can say, we're spending this money to bring in this much more proven commodity. And so I think the calculus is changing for high school quarterbacks in terms of where they're committing. And maybe it's going to become more and more obvious that go play quarterback for Tulane, go play quarterback for Minnesota. And not that Minnesota's a small place, it's a big place, but it's not a factory that expects to be deep in the playoffs every year. Go play quarterback for James Madison or something like that and get those reps, because as we're seeing, the path more and more to playing at one of those huge places, if that's your dream, is probably to succeed elsewhere first. Yeah. And so the money's there. If you are a success at a MAC school, if you're a success at an American school, if you're a Mountain West school, like you and I both know, if San Diego State finds and develops an excellent quarterback, he's the next quarterback for USC.
Danny O'Neil was at times the starting quarterback at Wisconsin. Yeah, I hear you on that. And I give,
it's just different calculus.
Totally. I mean, behind me, 5-star QB. The data is there. The book that Joey Roberts and I wrote, we give it to every parent at Elite 11 every summer. And I know we're long-winded, but like I'm passionate about this subject. Those families don't want to hear that. Like they because the opportunity to go to a said blue blood school, whether it's SC, Ohio State, Clemson, Miami, as a freshman, like you're still getting broke off an insane deal.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
Granted, you're not going to North Texas and throwing for 4,000 yards and now find yourself at Oklahoma State. That kid didn't play in high school. You know what I mean? Like he was a walk-on. Like I just don't think that's where I think we're going to hit a wall with these big-time quarterback recruits. Like,
well, it's also, I think there is an element. There's an element of, and I think a lot of successful people who are people with heads on their shoulders recognize, no matter the industry, a lot of it is luck. Of all of this is luck.
Luck. It's Jake Rodriguez. If he doesn't go to Oregon, I think he plays in college
Sure.
football because he could spin it. If he went to Texas Tech, an air raid offense, ran the pistol for Rick Neuheisel,
Right.
like for sure. It's same thing in the NFL. It's fit.
It's fit, but look, it's also luck. You commit to a school and then the coach leaves or the coach gets fired. You commit to a school and then this random walk-on is forced into action because everybody else is hurt and he's awesome. You commit to a school the year after Brock Purdy commits and it turns out he's awesome and you're going to do nothing but sit, even if you're good, right? That there's just dumb luck all over the place and you have to acknowledge that that's a factor and go from there. Because if you sit and you're behind a quarterback or you go to a place and you're positive you're going to be the next great thing, you're just going to sit and stew and make bad decisions, chasing bad decisions. And so there is something to just like, I acknowledge this. I acknowledge that a lot of this is out of my hands. I acknowledge that 3 weeks into the season, I could be dumped by the love of my life and that affect me for the next month. And now I'm going to have to convince people that I'm over Brianna and can be a good quarterback again. It's just bad luck in so many of these cases. And so you kind of like have to turn over your ability to control everything, which is really hard for all of us. But I just think so much of it comes down to just like the toss up that is life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Brianna, shout out.
I'm sorry. All the Briannas out there. I'm sure you're lovely people.
Okay.
We've all had a Brianna.
We're gonna sure have. We're gonna put a bow on this. I would like to come back to this in the off season because I think it's a fun conversation to have around not just the state of the game. That's too broad, but like some of the very specifics that are happening. You've got a great purview on it. I appreciate your time, Dan. Everybody go to Solid Verbal. Anything you need to promote? I know you got a live show after the game.
Yeah, we're doing live streams after the games. Go to solidverbal.com, hit subscribe, just like you should be doing at yoption.com. Hitting subscribe. It's one thing to just float in and out. Lock in with the Yogi lifestyle. That's what I'm saying.
I love that. I can't wait till you come out to the West Coast. We're going to lock into some avocado toast.
Can't wait.
I got a new breakfast burrito that is the best breakfast burrito in Los Angeles. It's across the street from Bluey's.
Okay.
So we're going there here in Mar
I'm going on tour. Take me on a
Beach.
recruiting trip.
I'm done and done.
Can't wait.
Thank you for spending time with us here to Dan. Thank you to all of you for joining us here. YouTube channel, hit subscribe. You know the deal on social. We'll collaborate on all the content with the Solid Verbal and Dan and his community. To, of course, our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. Ton of love. They always sponsor our guests and every one of these podcast conversations here at yoption.com. And away we go. We got a deep dive, Dan. You'll love this. Analytics behind the paywall of what a broadcaster and a coach looks at. That is coming this week around this semifinal matchup between Oregon and Indiana. Next week, we'll be back with a deep dive in the quarterback play. And we have a guest that both Dan and I love having breakfast with in Los Angeles. They call that a tease. Lots of love. Enjoy the semis.
We'll be right back.